Hello, everybody, and welcome to ClueCon Weekly, sponsored by Signalwire. This week with us, we have Allison Smith, which needs no introduction, but I will still introduce her. She's the foremost IVR expert in the industry and the voice of telephony for a while now. Thank you for joining us, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
And if you'd like to just give us a little introduction about yourself for the few people who don't know you.
Sure. Okay, so I'm a telephone voice. Basically, I voice IVR, auto attendant, on hold systems, AI programs, and the like. So my voice is heard on many systems that are, not so open source. So I've done some work with Cisco Meraki, Mitel, ShoreTel, even some of the bells. And so in the open source world, I'm probably best known as the voice of Asterisk, but also Free Switch, Free PBX, Vital PBX, and of course Signalwire, the core sounds that are on there. So yeah, basically I'm a disembodied voice.
Mhm.
And I'm also being developed as an upgrade for Amazon Alexa, which is extremely exciting, but it's hit a couple of roadblocks with the pandemic. So,
Of course.
yeah, hopefully it will get off the ground. But yes, so yeah, my voice is heard on many platforms, and I really enjoy what I do because it's different every day. The industries that hire me are limitless. And
So,
yeah, it's great. It's great work and it's fun.
So now that you've heard Allison's voice, you certainly recognize her because you have heard her voice somewhere in during a phone call. It's literally impossible you haven't. So that's that is and this is also going to be a very pleasant interview because this is a very familiar voice to me. Like I grew up working with your with the voice of Asterisk samples back in the day, to professional
Oh my
learn,
gosh.
etc.
You
So
probably hear me in your nightmares. I don't know.
no, that's reserved for. Do you remember Asterisk has a monkey's sound?
Oh
Th-
my gosh.
that's
Yes.
what we used to do to play with something went wrong. So that's what
Yes.
I hear in my nightmares still.
Well, this past summer, Citibank had a big failure of their phone system. So for one day, I believe it was in August, anybody who called into Citibank heard the asterisk prompt, "Weasels have eaten our phone system." So I don't know
Oh,
why. I don't know why that was their default prompt, but that is what people heard. And Business
Weasels is
Insider
just
picked up.
fantastic. Yeah.
I know, yeah. Business Insider wrote an article about it. They interviewed me, and it was just so crazy. Of all the prompts that I've recorded, why weasels have eaten our phone system? I don't
That's
know.
your most famous prompt. Well, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's been used
Yeah,
a lot.
weasels and monkeys and who knows what. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we
Oh,
use that a lot, so it is.
yes,
It's been a great journey, and it led to creation of things like Cingular, etc. So it's
absolutely.
telephony has
Yes.
gone a long way from those, but we still use them on occasion.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Signal Wire kind of took the name of Asterisk and expanded it and made it better. So,
Yeah, Friswitch it took its own life thanks to Tony and the rest of the team, and it was
yep,
built in a very good platform. So, since
absolutely.
you're an IVR expert, I would like to ask you a few things about how people could design their IVRs. So, the first thing, and probably most important, as you'll know, there's something going on called the pandemic, which has been weird
I
for the
haven't heard
telephony
about
industry.
this.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't leave my house ever either, so that's the
Yeah.
the that's been interesting for the telephony industry because many of the companies that are involved in telephony actually got better business, more business out of the pandemic due to companies moving their people, etc. But I'm sure there's many things going on that still need to be addressed regarding especially how companies communicate with their customers. So do you
Oh,
think
yeah.
there's changes should be done? What's happening in the space? As the IVR changed to the pandemic?
Um, it's changed a huge amount. So I think the thing to keep in mind is that unified communications have never been more important, simply because everybody's working from home, everyone's remote, hardly anybody is working in the same workspace anymore. So things need to be centralized and streamlined so that maybe perhaps customers aren't under the illusion that they're still calling one central office. I think most people know that you're going to be reaching remote workers. That's just inevitable. But it's really, really important that your IVR, first of all, points out that you're still in business because
Hmm.
unfortunately, so many businesses have gone under or will go under. So it's really, really important for your phone system to impart the idea of, yes, we are open for business. It's it's a little bit different, but we are still open. So most importantly, I think, is that if the pandemic has changed your opening hours in any way, if it's changed the length of response time, often it will cause customers to have to wait a little longer on support tickets and stuff like that. So I think it's really important that your phone messaging informs them of any changes to your workflow, any delays that they can expect. Um, if you offer things like storefront service or if you have any kind of a drop off service, people need to know exactly what the protocol is. So if there's going to be any face to face contact with customers, of course, naturally, you need to inform them of mask usage, hand sanitization, distancing, and stuff like that. Um, one of my hugest clients is PetSmart. I love these guys. They've used me for years to do their store address system. At first, it was like reading 900 addresses in a row. We are located at blah, blah, blah. So that was quite a time intensive job. But they have closed stores, they've opened other stores, they've kind
Oh
of
yeah.
amalgamated stores. So it's been like a huge thing. So I've had to do a lot of updates. But in addition, they still allow customers to come into stores in some markets. And Pet Grooming Salon has a whole procedure of how to drop off your pet during the pandemic. So it's important to keep customers up to date on all that. And also, if there are changes, there's constantly lockdowns and then states coming out of lockdowns. So it's really important to keep your messaging current and up to date, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. It sounds like it's a great starting point. I'm sure there's ways to handle it that involve both re-recording messages, but also maybe people could split their IVR trees so they can easily remove options. So if your
Yeah.
entire grooming section is closed, you just remove that from the
Yes.
IVR. So
Yeah.
splitting the audio files helps build things in a more modular way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. And the other thing that sort of occurred to me is that this can also be a time of relationship building with
Hmm.
companies. So I think it's really a good opportunity for companies to say, this is a difficult time, we're all going through this, all those, phrases that we all keep hearing. But this can be a real opportunity for companies to say, we're making changes so that we can still be here for you and we can still serve you and we're not going to abandon you.
Hmm.
So there's that opportunity as well to reinforce that customer relationship, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, because people only have the phone to reach out to those companies right now.
Exactly.
And so many people in many markets will just make a phone call instead of going on a website. And
Exactly.
then there's
Yes.
age groups involved, etc. Like we
Hmm.
all know,
Hmm.
we all know that all have that one relative that won't use the website no matter what.
Sure.
They need
Sure.
a phone number, it won't work. And that's the
Exactly.
so yeah, so that leads us into a different but similar discussion. So
Hmm.
right now we've expanded on how companies who do have a phone tree and IVR should change their messaging and their communication. But what if I have a small outfit? Because this has been coming up in my work as an evangelist, as customer success at Cingular. The idea is that many companies need a phone tree now. They didn't have one before. So, in your experience, what will be the key points for a company looking into building out their first IVR? A scenario
Yeah.
could be I have 4 or 5 employees, and in a company of such size, they usually serve different roles. So, one is sales, one will be
Hmm.
support, one will be HR, etc.
Yeah.
And I right now I used to have a single phone in the office. I'd pick up the phone, hear whoever was on the other line, and just yell, "Hey, Allison, it's for you." And you just walk over and talk to whoever, which is
Yeah.
actually how many companies run right now. Right now, Allison is at her own home. Lucas is at her own home. James is it. in his own office, etc. So we need a way to communicate. What would be a good way to start for a company that needs a new IVR? What are the base principles?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad you asked that. So the main thing for people to keep in mind is that people's attention span is really, really short, shorter than they think it is.
Hmm.
And there's been studies done, and that they've determined that the human brain can actually only remember about 5 or 6 options or choices or items. So it's really important that in the opening greeting, people limit the amount of choices to 5 maximum. That is the most I would ever put in an opening auto attendant
Hmm.
greeting. Right. So, and the other thing is to front stack them according to importance or frequency of use or emergency.
Hmm.
So, in other words, if you offer critical support to your customers, you want to make sure that that choice is probably near the top of the menu and have them go down in descending order in importance or usage. So, identify what are the 5 most popular things that people would call in about, and of those, which are the most important, and front stack them that way. If you have to have people go into a sub menu, and I'm not crazy about sub menus because I think
Hmm.
most companies, especially if it's a small company, you can probably sort the callers sufficiently with 5 choices. But if you need to
Okay.
get them to drill deeper, if they press technical support and you have 3 people in tech support that do 3 completely different things, then maybe in a sub menu have 3 options at the very most. Again, I'm
Hmm.
not a big fan of sub menus, but try to make it as simple as possible to use. And I don't know if you've ever maneuvered through a phone tree, Luca, where you've thought, oh, okay, what I'm calling in about is kind of like choice number 1,
Yeah, but
but
not
I
quite.
don't know if it is. Exactly. So what if you pick the wrong choice? What if it's kind of like a little bit like choice number 2? Or what if I'm calling a little bit about number 3? So people have this fear that they're going to choose wrong and be sent through the whole process again. So,
I often get that when the options are too specific. Like when
oh,
you call your phone company, and instead of them just asking, I don't know, if you have a technical issue, press 1. If you are calling about billing, press 2. The option
yes.
is if you're calling about billing on your foreign travel options when it's Friday and it's noon, or things like that. So they're very extremely specific, and that's
Right.
confusing.
Yeah. So if the choices were almost broader, you would have a better chance of selecting the right option, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
also because honestly, I think that many companies behind those rows of options, I have one person answering for the billing stuff, or agents that they all do the billing. It's not like the people. If you call about billing when you're in your country, or you call about the billing when you're in a foreign country, you're
Yes.
probably going to speak with the same people. So I don't think it really
Yes.
matters if they're asking you, are you calling about your traffic in the European Union? It's the same
Yes.
person that will answer us anyways.
Right. Yes. My bank, I don't call often, but if I do, they ask for my language preference twice. So, I'm Canadian, so they're obviously going to check if you want English or French, but they don't just check once, they check twice. And I don't know why, so, and often there's kind of frustrating things that people write into their system because they hear it all the time and they think that their system also needs to have things like, please listen to the entire menu before
Oh,
making your
those are
choice.
fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Yeah,
As the
stuff like
options
that.
might have recently changed, and
Which
they
you and I
haven't.
know they have not. No,
No, that's not.
no,
If
no.
that message is there, it means they haven't changed because
Exactly,
people are not paying
exactly.
attention to their. Well, maybe your bank is trying to catch a foreign spy, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe.
you
Or
contradicted
maybe,
yourself, so they send the Canadian Secret Service to check on you. So you
or
said
maybe,
you.
yeah. I've been on hold for so long that I have a chance to learn French in that
Yeah,
time. I
oh,
don't know.
right.
I
So
don't know.
maybe you have learned French in the 2 hours we kept you on hold. So in
Exactly,
case you want to
exactly.
practice that, let's
Right, right, yeah.
take a
You
look
know,
together.
the other thing that I wanted to mention, and it actually kind of ties back to our previous COVID conversation, I actually just did an IVR for a small hospital in Washington State. and they deal with COVID testing and vaccinations, which is great. But in their IVR, they want to make sure that people don't break free from the IVR, decide to
Mhm.
call a random department in the hospital and ask for specific information. And they did this warning about, please don't do that, because none of the staff have any more info than we're telling you right now or on our website. So they want to prevent their staff from being overtaxed by people
Of
who
course.
are on a quest for more intel about this. So you could actually design your IVR to preserve your staff's sanity by saying to people, don't try to, try to get extra information out of our staff, because really they know as much as we do, and they have all the information that's already on our website. So
Yeah, if you're checking on something, the data that's going to be in the system is going to be the same data that's on that
absolutely.
people in the hospital know, or it's going to be something that they can tell you over the phone anyways.
Sure, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is that we still spend some time on the phone. So I always ask people to remember their last time that they had a frustrating experience on the phone and try not to recreate that. And almost always it has to do with keeping it brief and making it move quickly. Don't be too wordy. Because again, people are busy and they don't really have the patience to listen to a big wordy opening greeting, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of the university I went to used to have an IVR where one of the options was listening to essentially the entire student code. It was a 2-minute recorded message about someone reading the student code in a boring voice.
Oh gosh,
Like
that's crazy.
maybe you just want to know what you were allowed to wear on a formal occasion. I don't know, which is things that happen, and websites were not that common, etc. But instead of having a breakdown of student code, it was literally someone reading the entire thing. So,
Crazy.
which was
I
super useful because I don't think so. If you get to the end of that message, you deserve a medal or something like it.
I Yeah. And did they ever track how many people actually listened to the whole thing and made it through the whole thing?
I don't know, but I'd be very surprised if the number was not zero. Like maybe
Yes.
someone will just leave it playing for the sake of it, but it's
Yeah.
certainly not going to be useful. The
Well,
messages is very
yeah,
brief.
sorry. Here's the other thing that I haven't actually had to voice for a long time, and I'm really glad about that. It's driving directions
Oh,
to the office. And maybe that's a COVID thing because people aren't actually going in person. But it drove me crazy. So press 3 for driving directions, and then you press 3 and there's, if you're coming from the north, take
oh,
I-95, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like
voice-driven
every
Google Maps. Wow,
everybody
I
has
never.
GPS in their car. Everybody has GPS on this thing, right? So we don't need to find out
I
how to
never
get to
heard
your
about
office.
DTMF-driven navigation. That's the first. That's amazing.
Believe me, I've read it.
We should
Yes.
we
So
should build that. We should build that as a joke. Like if you're seeing a yellow sign, press 1. If the
yes,
intersection has a Waffle House, press 2.
yes. If you see a Waffle House, you've gone too far. Turn
Yeah,
around and go back. That would be
because
great. Let's work on that.
they're only in the south. You were somewhere around Buffalo. So if you're seeing a Waffle House, there's a problem. Turn back.
You're in Alabama.
You drove
So
about
yeah.
800 miles too far. Sorry.
Oh
Definitely.
my gosh.
So you mentioned
Crazy.
something earlier that piqued my
Yeah.
interest, even if it's, I don't know how much you can say about that, but you mentioned your voice being worked on to be used for AI bots. This is a
Yeah.
technical question.
Mhm.
How does a voice actor work on an AI bot? Because to me, I mean, as a technical expert, the voice, so text to speech is done through various engines, etc. But they synthesize the sentences according to various phoneme structures, etc. There's many
Yes.
ways to do it, but
Yeah.
how does that work? So how does a voice actor get her voice turned into a text to speech engine?
Right. Okay.
What
So
do they make you read numbers all day so they capture your phoneme structure?
yeah, so how it happens, so the one that you're probably most familiar with is the Allison text to speech made by Kepstrel.
Yep.
It was probably about 15 years ago that that was initially recorded. We've done a couple of updated versions. So what they do is they actually send almost like a moderate telephone book sized script. It's
Oh,
pretty extensive, and it's not single words. What it is sentences that actually don't make that much sense on their own. And what they're trying to do is trying to farm the various phonemes and subphonemes. So, I read sentences that said something like, Sally put on the red raincoat because it was Tuesday. And from that, their system can break that down into various different sounds, which get stored away and cataloged and then used as people need them. It's no more complicated than that. My own contribution to it is just mapping out enough time to read a whole bunch of sentences. I think it was probably about 6 months of work for
wow.
me. Yeah, doing a couple of hours a day because I can't sit there
Of
all
course.
day and do it. It's mind-numbingly boring, and it's very taxing actually. It's kind of hard on your system. So yeah, it took a while,
Yeah, the
but
text
then
to
there
speech will not work very well if you're yawning at the end of the day.
exactly
Like, Sally,
exactly.
put on the yellow.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
It will be
No,
very weird when used as the engine.
yeah, it would. Another one that I did is a great big collection of names, first and last proper names to be
Oh,
used for a
wow.
medical auto dialer. Yeah. So this thing required me to read name after name, 350,000 of them. And thank God it wasn't alphabetical because I probably would have lost my mind, but it was just sitting there all day with a computer that flashed a name up on the screen. So I had to go, Lisa, Robert, Luca, and
Wow.
yeah, and I'm pretty sure Luca was in there too. Yeah, so that's these are kind of the strange things that I've done, and this is why I show up when I'm not expecting it. I always tell the story of staying at a hotel and ordering an automated wake up call, and I got me calling me to wake me up. So that was
Hey,
very,
hello,
very.
Allison. This is Allison. Wake up. This is you calling you from
um,
the future.
my husband downloaded a workout coach on his phone that sort of keeps you motivated at the gym. And the first day that he used it, he came back and he said, guess who's the voice of the bot telling me to work
Oh,
out? And yes, it was me saying, five
that's
more
double
sit-ups.
motivation.
I know.
That's
Actually,
just
he
perfect.
changed it immediately to the Australian male because he gets enough of me at home.
Oh, well,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
that's some
pretty funny.
fun too.
Yeah.
So it does
Yeah.
take a long time to build a voice for text to speech, and yeah, I
Yes.
guess so. It's what's known as a known text interpolation. So essentially, they know what your sentence is supposed to say, and the engines are able to then break down the sounds so
Exactly.
they match the
Yeah,
sentences. That is very interesting. Yeah, there's
it is. Yeah.
a lot of people think AI and chatbots, etc., are just come into being by virtue of some fantastic super machine learning algorithm or the other. There's a lot of that too, but there's a lot of hard work behind it. So
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And a
and
human initially has to read the prompts to begin with. So yeah,
and
I
and
enjoy
that's
it, but it's not something I'd want to do all the time.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like very taxing. Like 6 months of 2 days, 2 hours a day reading
Crazy.
sentences that don't make much sense to begin with.
Exactly, yeah. And the Alexa project is a company that does retail surveys. So them, luckily, they are having me read entire sentences, and it would be, as though you were shopping at Costco and you come back home and you trigger your Alexa system and you can take a short 5-question survey. So that is not manufactured by fragments of sounds. It's me doing entire sentences, which I think always sounds a bit better. You can always tell when a voice is Frankenstein together from
Hmm.
sounds, you know. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
That's something I always recommend to people doing IVRs is never put together different voices
yes.
because then
Oh,
you get those fantastic effects you do hear on IVRs using your voice too when there's
yeah.
your very good voice saying, so your credit is $500.
And surprisingly, these are large companies that decide
Yeah.
to take a shortcut and just grab a staffer when they have to do an update. I always tell the story of this big cable company up here in Canada called Shaw Cable. And I had to call over there because we were having an issue with something like our DCT box or something. And I think I counted about 10 different voices on their system, which is
Wow.
crazy. And it sounds very unprofessional. And especially when somebody like myself is available at short notice and I'm affordable, and you have the same consistent voice throughout the whole thing.
Something
I
an
just think it
experience
sounds
like
better.
that will make me look up mental health issues on Google. Like, am I having trouble? Why am I hearing 10 different people on a single call? Must be something wrong with me.
Exactly.
I'm hearing
Well,
voice.
years ago, somebody recorded an IVR for Santa, and they did it kind of like a bad telephone system. So it was like, "You have reached the voicemail box of Santa," with him slating his own name, which was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if
yeah.
it's done for a laugh, it's great. It can be. So there's one little thing I'd like to ask you, which is sort of a
Mhm.
personal question that might
Oh
interest many
my.
people in the audience. I've recently taken up the mantle of doing ClueCon Weekly from David,
Mhm.
and I've been doing other material, and I've doing a lot of video. How do you keep your voice working? Because you do far
Yeah.
more than I do. I do maybe a couple hours a day of recorded content plus customer calls, etc. And when I
Yeah.
go to bed in the evening, I can basically, I just have to gesture my family if I need anything because I can't speak anymore. What
Right.
could you recommend
Yes.
anything that will help keeping your voice in
Well,
shape?
okay. This
Well,
is not scotch. This is water. So hydration is probably your best
mhm.
friend in the entire world. So if you can just make sure that you are staying well hydrated, that will go a long way to making your voice last longer.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing that I would recommend, and it's kind of hard if you're doing video podcasts, but an old voiceover trick is to keep those green Granny Smith apples. You know the ones I'm talking about, the
Yeah.
bright green apples. Only those ones will do. And I buy them by the bag and I keep them on my lectern when I'm recording. And you take
Hmm.
a bite at the beginning of a project, and it sort of cleans the mouth out of, it sounds gross, but gummy saliva. If you have kind of like an issue with that, it's the best thing. It actually clears the mouth out. I also avoid dairy products until the end of the day when I'm finished recording. Yogurt, anything like that will actually cause kind of
Yeah.
a heaviness in the voice. But speaking for long periods of time is hard on the voice, and the voice can only be used for a certain amount of time before it lets you know that it's done and it's finished. So
Yeah, so
yeah,
there's a hydration, Granny's meat apples, which is actually a great trick. I love
yeah,
apples, by the way. So I can take a
perfect.
bite between recordings at least,
Yeah,
and yeah, I think that's very. So all those various hot beverages. There's many
yes, oh yeah,
infusions that are marketed, etc.
yes.
I didn't find much help in that, other than probably the hydration they carry with
Yes,
them. So
exactly. Yeah. Hot water with lemon is a good go-to. And I've been trying to cut down on caffeine, not successfully, but sometimes that's a good substitute drink. There's also, it's a cough syrup, and it's Chinese. It's called Nin Jiam.
mhm.
Nin Jiam. And it is fantastic if you feel like you have like a little bit of a tickle, almost like the start of a cold starting, which you don't want, obviously. It is the best thing in the world. Singers have known about it for years. Nin Jiang. I think
Nice.
actually Walmart and CVS and the usual drugstores will sell it. So that's my hot tip of the day right
That's
there.
fantastic. Yeah, that's going to be super useful for all the people in the audience that do kind of voice work, which happen. I mean, a lot of people in telephony are either on calls with customers, so we just record stuff,
Sure.
etc. So
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
very interesting. Okay, so well, thank you, Allison, for joining us today. It was a very interesting chat.
Thank you.
We
It
went
was so
over
fun.
we went over many things. So just to recap for people, we went over how to handle IVR changes in your existing IVR. So make sure people know what change in your company. A few things how to get started if you need an IVR now and you didn't have one before, and then you saved out the day with Granny Smith apples and the Chinese cold syrup. Right? It's
Yes.
Chinese. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
So again, thanks very much, Allison. We had Allison
Thank
Smith,
you,
the IVR
Luca.
voice, with us, and well, see you soon. You've been a
Thanks.
regular, so it's going to be we're going to do something else in the future.
I love it. Thanks. I'm available anytime you want to talk.
Thanks again, and see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.